Yeah, if you do want to move up, please feel free so they don't have to yell at you and stuff. But my name is Madison Wallace. I'm part of the community family engagement team with Ms. Tanita. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We have part of our occupational therapy department here ready to talk to you about autism and sensory processing, and they're going to take it away. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming. Just a little introduction about myself. I am Ann Green. I am an occupational therapist, like you said, with the district. I have been with the district for 16 years, so I love it. I love the kids that I work with. It's wonderful. And with me tonight I have
I'm Tracy Cruz. I am also an occupational therapist in the district, and I've been in OT for 30 years, which just seems unreal. But I love my job, so that's fabulous. So we're going to talk tonight about autism and sensory processing disorder.
some of the objectives tonight that we would like to go over with you is just understanding some of the differences between sensory and behavior. They can very much look alike, and so we want to help you discriminate between the two. We want to teach you a little bit about sensory processing and what that is and what you can do to help, and explore some strategies for your kiddos at home. And then we'll finish out by working on talking about how to collaborate with your schools to help meet the needs of your students.
So to start, 90 to 95% of students with autism have sensory experiences that are different than the typical sensory experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have a sensory processing disorder, and you can also have a sensory processing disorder and not have autism. So they can be related, but they are not always related. In general, we are sensory beings. We all take information in through our senses, and we all have sensory preferences. So that's another thing, that we have sensory preferences. That doesn't mean that we have a sensory processing disorder. So for example, I love a hot shower. I don't like a cold shower, and if you make me take a cold shower, I'm going to be extremely agitated, and I'm just not going to be happy. That doesn't mean I have a disorder. It means I have a sensory preference. So as occupational therapists, we deal with the sensory piece of autism. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is just the sensory piece of autism. Because again, there's 90 to 95% of children with autism have those sensory processing difficulties. So our brains receive information from our senses through our sight, our sound, our touch, our taste, and our smell. So those are the 5 senses that you all are very familiar with, that we take information in through. But then there's the also lesser known senses, the proprioception sense, which is your body's awareness of where it is in space. There's the vestibular input, that's your balance and movement awareness. And then there's interoception, and that's just being aware of what your body feels inside. So that's your feeling of hunger, your feeling of thirst. That can be pain, or using the bathroom, your temperature regulation. So those are all the ways that we take in information. And our brains organize this information, and it helps us respond appropriately to that information that we are taking in.
So that brings us to what is sensory processing disorder. So that is the brain has difficulty organizing and responding to sensory input. This can be sensory, which is part of sensory regulation. And sensory regulation is the foundation for self-regulation. So that's why a lot of our kids, if they're very have difficulty with bright lights or loud noises, they really have a hard time self-regulating. And that is their ability to manage their emotions, their behaviors, and their reactions. This is what impacts their focus, their peer interactions, and this can lead to the overreaction or the hypersensitivity or underreaction to different stimuli. We need to create these nice supportive environments to help promote that sensory regulation, because as you see in there, sensory regulation is the bottom tier of overall self-regulation.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about behavioral meltdowns versus our sensory meltdowns. And also real quick, before I go over that, I'm gonna tell you that on the table, there's a little scanner code. It says scan me. And on that code, you're gonna get all of our handouts. We've made several handouts for you about all of the presentation. So please don't forget to scan that. And if you don't have one on your table, come up here and find one. Okay, so behavioral meltdowns versus sensory meltdowns, and they often look the same. You're gonna see kicking, screaming, shouting, stomping. You'll often see sweating or biting, throwing, hitting, those kinds of things. They look the same, but they have very different reasons behind them. So your behavioral meltdowns, that's gonna be usually because a child either wants something or they wanna get out of doing something. So if they want something and they get it, you'll see that behavior stops abruptly. They got what they want and they're done melting down. Or they got out of doing what they wanted and that behavior will stop abruptly. Children also want to make sure that you are paying attention to them when they have this behavior, because if you're not paying attention to them, they're not going to get what they want. They want an audience. They want to make sure that people are aware that they want a certain thing and that they're going to get that certain thing. Another thing that can affect these behaviors is the amount of screen time that a child has. Screen time should definitely be monitored at home. When we give a child a screen to help them calm themselves down, we're taking away that opportunity to teach them how to calm themselves on their own, getting down with them, showing them how you self-regulate, and teaching them ways to self-regulate without a screen. It's very important because when they come to school, we can't just give a kid a screen when they're having some kind of a meltdown. So just be aware that that screen time can really impact behaviors. And then sensory-based meltdowns tend to be due to an overloaded sensory system or feeling of being overwhelmed. The child does not typically care if you are in the room or paying attention to them. Their system is overwhelmed regardless of who is watching them. The behavior is going to continue again without that audience because they are just overwhelmed. And then with the sensory meltdowns, there's not really a goal. The behaviors will only stop once they have regulated themselves, calmed themselves down, and when they're really young and they don't have that ability to do that on their own, if you can get there and help them calm down, that's when you're going to see that behavior stop. But that doesn't, if it's a sensory overload, that's not going to stop as soon as they get something.
So some common signs of sensory processing disorder, a lot of times you'll look at the kid and try to figure out which system might be affected in the situation. So different systems act differently in different situations. You could have a kid that is hypersensitive or over-responsive, so they are easily overwhelmed by loud noises or bright lights visually. That might be bothering them, or certain clothing textures. They don't like the tag on their clothes. That can ruin their whole day. Or like if it's a texture of food, like I'm hungry, but this isn't the snack I want. So they're over responsive to that. And that's where we see kind of more of those behaviors. They could also have a hyposensitivity to some of these sensory inputs. So they're the ones that crave movement. They want to be up and moving. They want to be spinning. They want to be constantly touching others. They are kids that have an extremely high pain tolerance. So your kid falls on the floor and they're bleeding, but they're acting like nothing happened. So their bodies need a lot of input to register some of that information. They can also seem very unaware of their bodies. They're laying down, they're like sprawled on the table, or they run into things because they don't know that the wall is there because they're not getting enough input into their system. Like, this is where my body is.
Okay, so why does my child melt down? And again, we're talking here about those sensory processing issues. We're not talking about that behavioral issue. So meltdowns are a reaction to sensory overload or anxiety, not defiance. So if they're having a meltdown and it's a true sensory meltdown, they're not doing it because they're trying to get something or they're trying to be naughty. They're really struggling with that regulation of their body. The child is overwhelmed and unable to cope with their environment. And our job is to help them regulate and learn to cope. And again, I think one of the biggest things that we can tell you is, as a parent, the most important thing when you're coming to your child that is overloaded is you need to come calm, regulated yourself, use a quiet voice, Don't get mad at them for how they're feeling, and teach them strategies, teach them that deep breathing strategy when you're coming to them to help them calm down.
So if you know, like this sounds like your student or your kid, it's important to create a sensory friendly home. So creating like a specific environment that meets the needs of your kids, that can promote that comfort, that safety, then that enhances their focus, their learning, and it can encourage them to be more independent and help really facilitate that emotional regulation and help be supportive in social interactions and encourage that play and exploration. There are certain ways you can do this. One of the things is having like a designated quiet zone, a calm space with low lighting, soft pillows, not a lot of clutter. Because if they're overstimulated by a lot of things, they need somewhere quiet where their body can just go and calm down. Use dimmable or warm tone lights instead of bright lights, or even natural light would be beneficial. Use noise reducing headphones, like if it's too loud and you know they need to calm down, or let them have that quiet place. You can play calming music. There's a metronome. You can Google a metronome and do it for 54 beats per minute. And that is actually the mother's heartbeat. So most of us are regulated by that heartbeat noise because that's what we're used to when we were in the womb. So the metronome at 54 beats per minute really has a calming effect. I know in some of my classrooms I've used it, and it's amazing. You can just feel the level of the room kind of come down. Textures, so offering like a favorite stuffed animal or a blanket or something or fidget, or like those sequin pillows that everybody loves. Those things can be calming because it's just something they know, so it gives their hands something to do.
Okay, so calming the overloaded system. I want you to think back to when you brought that baby home and think back to those ways that you calm that baby down. We know that we were taught to swaddle our baby because when you swaddle them in a blanket, it provides that proprioceptive input, which is that deep pressure into their joints, and that's a calming input. You're taught to rock your baby, and you rock your baby back and forth very slowly because that calms them down. Pacifiers are another great way. Sucking is calming to a baby. The oral area is one of the best areas that you can use to calm somebody down. And then just you can, singing, calm music, those kinds of things we use to calm our children down. So I want you to think back when you're thinking just overall, if you have a child that's overstimulated, think back to what you did when they were babies, because that's kind of the first plan to get those kids to calm down. So heavy work, that's that proprioceptive input that I talked about. That's always calming and organizing to all children. In any state, that's going to help calm them down. And you'll see a lot of kids seek out this when you see these toe walkers. A lot of times kids toe walk because that gives them a lot of proprioception, a lot of deep pressure through their joints, and that's calming to kids. So if you notice somebody's toe walking, you can kind of look and go, oh, they're looking for some deep pressure. They're really trying to calm themselves down. You can incorporate some of these deep pressure activities into their day. You can do wall push-ups or chair push-ups. Have them sit on a chair and push the bottom of the chair and push the bottom up off of the ground, or push against a wall 10 times and do some wall push-ups. Animal walks are another great way to get some of that input into your joints. So have them crab walk or bear crawl, those kinds of things. And then you can just incorporate heavy work into their daily routine. Have them help you carry groceries in from the house, or have them unpack the groceries and put them on the cabinet. Have them carry the laundry basket for you. Another good way is rolling them up into a burrito. Make them into a burrito and give them some deep pressure, add some cheese, add some tomatoes, and squeeze them and give them some of that deep pressure and kind of make it a game with them. Pillow squeezes are another thing you can do, or the couch cushions, and just have them lay on the ground and give some deep pressure with that. Massages are also another good way. Make sure that you're doing deep pressure massages. You're not doing the light tickling massages, because that can make a child more aroused and excited, and you want to try and calm them down. And another good way is firm hugs. just that deep pressure. And you know, some of those kids that just come in and they just want a big hug because that calms them down. I will say that if your kid doesn't like touch and they don't want you to come to them and hug them, make sure you wait for them to come to you before you just start wrapping your arms around them. So in general, that proprioceptive input helps the body reset and it just feels grounded.
And continuing with the calming that overloaded system movement, we talked a little bit about that linear movement. So that's that back and forth movement. We don't really want to do circular movements. We don't want to spin them around in circles because that, again, is going to rouse them. That's going to make them higher. It's not really have that settling effect that we want. So rocking or smooth jump or like slow jumps on a trampoline. Directed movement is mostly what we're looking at here. So like you could do an obstacle course. So setting it up so it's directed and purposeful movement. Inversion. This is a pretty cool one that you can just, hey, let's touch our toes. That resets the nervous system. It does this whole, it gets the blood flowing from top to bottom. That really helps do that, regulate the nervous system. Movement before seated or challenging transitions. This is really good. Like if you know you're gonna go out in the community, go to church, go to the store, things like that are gonna require them to sit in the cart or, sit in a seat for longer periods of time or go to the library, then try to do something movement based before that. So they're getting their needs met, or like I've heard people say, fill their cup up with that movement to allow them to get all that input into their joints so that they can keep more calm in that seated situation. And this is important because movement organizes and prepares that brain for learning.
Okay, so then calming the overloaded system with our other senses. So your tactile sense, giving them Play-Doh. Play-Doh is an interesting one because it's getting that deep pressure into your joints again. So we'll do a lot of Play-Doh or putty or clay, those kinds of things. And it's also working on strengthening those little hands and getting them ready to come to school and write. Rice bins, water play fidgets, those are all ways to incorporate some of that tactile input that just kind of helps calm them down. You'll see a lot of kids want to go out in the sandbox and just pour the sand through those little toys because that calms them. Again, the oral area, like I said, a lot of people, just as adults, we like to chew gum because that makes us able to calm and pay attention. So you'll see a lot of people chewing gum. Crunchy snacks for kids are great. Blowing bubbles or pinwheels is another way to get that calming activity in. Sucking on straws. I think it's great when you have to send a water bottle in with your kid to school, send them with a straw, and that gives them that ability to suck and calm because that's calming. And then the auditory system, quiet music, calming music. If it's loud or if it's really fast music, that's not going to be calming. So play some of that quiet, gentle music, or like we said before, the metronome at 54 beats per minute. And I would play it in the background during anything. You can put it on during mealtime if mealtime is hard for you. Play the metronome in the background so they have some of that calming input while they're sitting there. And then the noise canceling headphones too are another way to address that auditory need.
Again, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but setting up a calm down space in your home is important. Having that quiet corner, limited visual distractions, beanbag or soft seating, again, it gives them some of that proprioceptive input while they're calming down. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your hands on it. Or it could be like couch cushions or things like that. Just give it that. If they don't want your touch, they can get that calming sensation through that. The quiet music, visually calming things like a lava lamp or the bubble motion toys. Sometimes we have our visual stimulating kids that just want to watch that flow. Blowing bubbles gives kind of that same type of thing. They just want to watch them fall. Social stories, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit more in our next slide. Those are very important and it gives a heads up to what's coming. And like if you know there's a big transition or how this kid needs to know how to regulate in a situation, social stories are great because it gives them a roadmap to how they're supposed to feel or what they're expected to do in certain situations. Calming oils like lavender and vanilla. Some will use like a diffuser or something in their house and that helps override that olfactory system and gives that calming sense. Repetitive things like puzzles or sensory or tactile buckets. A lot of our kids love to line things up. They'll take out the toys, they'll line up the alphabet. And to them, that gives their mind that sense of ease. Like, I'm organizing my mind right now by organizing the alphabet. So a lot of that repetitive task, or like putting things in and out, that's their way of calming themselves down. They like that repetitive activity to help give them that sense of calm. And fidgets. Different types of fidgets, different textures, different things. We have a table back there too. Feel free to explore some different fidgets as well for kids that are available.
Okay, so visuals. Visuals are so important. Until a child is between 5 and 7 years old, they see in pictures in their head. So when you're thinking to yourself and you're talking to yourself in your head, children don't do that until they're 5 to 7 years old. So they're seeing in pictures. And then children with autism tend to see in pictures for a very long time, sometimes into adulthood. Temple Grandin, if you're familiar with her, she talked about how she sees in pictures. So that's one of the things that I want you to keep in mind when you're talking about visuals, how they're so important for kids, because that's how they're taking in information, and that's what they're seeing in their head. When you're saying, we're going to go to the store, they are trying to see a picture of a store in your head. So show them that picture so that they can see what is going to happen. Visual input is also important. It enhances the understanding and it improves retention, and it supports communication. So, for these kids that don't have that way to communicate, if they have those pictures and they can tell you what you want, but you need to show them how to use those pictures. So using those pictures is very important for kids, especially when they're young. Another good way to get those visuals in are social stories. Like Ann said, social stories are a great way to see what is going to be happening or to learn a new behavior that you're trying to teach, seeing it in pictures. So I know for a lot of my kids, I will give them a social story for at the end of the school year for the next school year. I'm going to write a social story about next year I'm going to come back to school and I'm going to have a new teacher, maybe I'm going to have a new school, but seeing that in pictures really helps them process that information. Toilet training, yes, any of those activities that you're trying to train them on doing can be, using social stories is a great way. You can create your own social stories. You can put it into ChatGPT, and that thing is amazing. That will tell you, it will write a social story for you, and it will even tell you what pictures to put in that social story. But I want to tell you that another great way would be to have your child help you and take a picture of them, have them incorporate it into making that social story, and have them their picture in the social story, because that's just more meaningful to them. But you can Google all sorts of pre-made social stories. Again, it's just a really great way to teach kids certain things and to help them know what to expect and what's coming up next. Another thing is the first then. I know we do a lot of first then verbiage. We tell kids, first we're going to go to the store and then we're going to go to the park. But again, seeing in pictures is just much more helpful for those kids that aren't at that point yet where they can remember those words. They're seeing the pictures. So show them, first we're going to go to the store, then we're going to go to the park, and use those pictures. And you can even just pull them up on your phone. It doesn't, if you don't have pictures printed out, you can just show them on your phone and show them what, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. So they kind of have an idea of what to expect next. Kids really need that routine and that structure, and so showing them those things and setting them up with those visuals is very important for that. Another great thing to do is timers. Again, when you say to a kid, we have 5 more minutes, they have no idea what 5 more minutes is. And so if you can show them a visual timer where they can see that time disappear, that's just so much more meaningful to that kid. You can download visual timers on your phones. You can put them on your computers. We have visual timers on our table in the back. Again, those visuals are just really important for kids.
Okay, for the next part of our presentation, we're going to kind of go over some strategies that you can use for kids in different situations. So to start us off, we'll talk a little bit about our oral seekers. Those are the kids that are putting everything in their mouths. So they might put a pen top eraser, they might, put the remote, they might, whatever. They want something in their mouth because they're looking for that input. So some things you can do is just offer safe oral alternatives. They make chewy jewelry, they have chew tubes, they have pencil toppers, silicone straws, like Tracy was saying earlier, the water bottle with the spouts or the straws gives them more of that input that they might be seeking, and gum for our age appropriate kids. Might not, the 3-year-old might not be able to handle gum, but the older kids, that might be something. Providing more oral play. So encourage them to do the bubble blowing, to blow the pinwheels, to do the party pop blowers, blowing cotton balls. You can make it into a race. Who can blow it the furthest across the table? Blow pom-poms too through straws. Who can do that? Who's going to get there fastest? Licking pudding or applesauce from their lips with their tongue. And that improves that oral awareness. Another thing that I use sometimes too are like vibrating toothbrushes, giving that input into that mouth so they're not chewing on everything, so they're getting that input from something else more appropriate. Using sensory snacks as breaks, so crunchy, the kids that like the crunchy, the carrots, the celery, the granola, chewy bagels, licorice. I've even known people to put licorice in the freezer so it gives it that extra resistance to our extreme chewers. Dried fruit has more of that chewy texture as well. And also cold and sour flavors are very much more alerting to kids. And so if they get something sour like a warhead or like sour things, then they're going to pucker up, and that kind of meets that need that they're looking for.
Okay, and then we have your oral avoiders. Those are going to be your picky eaters. So for these kids that are struggling with eating different types of foods, make sure that you're creating a positive mealtime environment and a routine for these kids. Keep mealtime predictable. Make sure that you're doing it in the same space, sitting at the kitchen table with the family and having the same routine every night. And sit together as a family and model to them how you eat. Don't put a lot of pressure on them. Make sure they're sitting with you, and make sure too that they stay at the table. They're going to be more successful in trying new foods if they're sitting at the table. It's part of the routine, and they're not kind of wandering around the house, and you're modeling for them again to eating different types of foods. Limit the distractions at the table. Don't let them sit there with toys or with a TV show on. You should really be concentrating on the mealtime, food exploration, those kinds of things, so they can really stay focused on that food. And then when you're looking at those picky eaters, always serve a safe food. Always serve something that they're going to eat, but then don't not give them other food. So if you're making a meal for the family, always give them some of that meal. They don't have to eat that meal, but they should always have it on their plate. Give them something that they will eat, but always expose them to things that the rest of the family is eating. And then you want to encourage food exploration. So they may not want to eat a certain type of food, and that's okay. Start with just having it on their plate. It just has to be on your plate. You don't have to touch it. And then we're going to get to where you just have to touch it with your hand. You don't have to eat it, but you're going to touch it with your hand, and then that's good. Then you can move into smelling the food, licking the food, take a bite, just one bite, that kind of thing. But kind of build them up with those foods that they struggle with. And then also involve the child with the cooking and the shopping and the food prep. Get them exposed to different types of foods, just like in the meal prep, not with the expectation of eating it, and make them feel involved and part of the process. The other thing you can do is just food play. Use your pancakes in the morning and make faces with your pancakes, or make some food art, that kind of thing. So you're getting them exposed to it, touching it, smelling it in a fun environment, but you don't have that expectation yet that they have to eat it. And then use food chaining. I think this is really important. If your child has a certain kind of food that they do like, kind of try and expand off of that. So if they like McDonald's chicken nuggets, now we're going to go home and we're going to make chicken nuggets ourselves, involve them in the process so they feel part of that process, and have them eat chicken nuggets store-bought. Another great thing I always like to do, my kids love spaghetti with spaghetti sauce, and so I would try and put as many different foods into that spaghetti sauce to kind of hide it in there, but they're getting exposed to different types of tastes and textures in that sauce. So use that food chain to kind of get them exposed to different foods.
Next, we'll talk a little bit about our touch seekers, for those kids who need to touch everything. A good thing is always teaching them what's appropriate touch. So, hey, Johnny, we don't put our hands on this kid, but you can use your stress ball, or here's some putty. Here's some different things you can use your hands for. So all of this comes with a teaching component, of course, too, but we also want to make sure we're meeting those needs. So wearing fidget bracelets or jewelry, like I'm up here twirling my ring, things like that, things that we know that are more acceptable to meet those needs. Keep small items in their pockets for hands-on access. So rubber bands, paper clips, small erasers, small fidgets, stuff that's safe and we know they're not like our oral seekers that are going to be putting it in their mouth. Offering structured tactile play. So Play-Doh, clay, kinetic sand, all those things that are going to give you a deeper, richer experience are going to help meet those needs faster. Water play, rice, beans, bins, any type of texture. They make sensory bins for every season. Go to the Dollar Tree, get some spiders, put it in some rice, things like that. Finger painting or shaving cream. I would say this is good, like if you're in the tub activity too, like the shaving cream on the wall, give them some of that experience as well. And like I said, to start off, teach the replacement behaviors. Hands in your pockets, hands on your lap. Use visuals and social stories for that appropriate touch. We have a lot of kids that just want to go up and hug everybody, so we still have to have that teaching component, like, hey, instead of hugging, ask if they want a high five. So even though they have that need, trying to teach those strategies on what's appropriate touch.
Okay, and then your touch avoiders. These are your kids that don't want to touch anything. They are not going to be your finger painters. So before you do any kind of touch that they're not really excited about, start with having them rub their hands together briskly, or take a wet washcloth and rub their hands. It kind of desenses their hands and gets their hands ready for that type of input. Start with their preferred types of fabrics or toys before you're expecting something that they don't necessarily want to touch. And then you can start with tools first. So if you're going to be finger painting, let's start with painting with a paintbrush, or let's touch something with a spoon or a sponge before you're expecting that direct skin contact. But again, they need to be exposed to a lot of these different experiences to help them grow into being able to touch those more easily. The other strategy you can use is the hand underhand. We know the hand overhand to do things, but if you put your hand under their hand and then you're touching the finger paint or the pudding or the shaving cream and their hand is on top of yours, that's another way to make them feel safe, and they're not necessarily touching it, but they're getting into the mix of it. And then pair touch with fun and control. So let them apply some different lotions or soaps or paint to themselves. Begin with clean tactile play. So if you have a kid that doesn't like that messy tactile play, do the dry beans, do rice, smooth stones before you're getting into those messy textures. So they're having some of that tactile input with something that's not so messy. And then always remember to give them control and choice. If they say, I want to stop, you need to honor that and you need to stop.
Next, we have our auditory seekers. These are our kids that are often our loud kids. They are constantly making noise or trying to make noise with other things, drumming on the table, drumming anything they can get at playing that musical instrument or musical toy over and over. So some ways we can help them meet those needs is play rhythmic instruments. So giving them a purpose for it. Play the drums, play the macarinas, the xylophone, the bells, where they can get that. But allowing them that purposeful play with that. Encourage humming, singing, or beatboxing during activities. Use a call and response song. So like BINGO and have them do the clapping, or if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, or Old MacDonald had a farm. So giving them that purposeful movement, again, to get some of that music or that auditory sensations. Offer headphones with music too. So see if that will help them, like if they're humming and stuff, see if they tolerate the headphones with the music on it to give them that calm and rhythmic beat. As you go, there are certain things like therapeutic and listening stuff that is more sophisticated on that, but sometimes that rhythm and that calm music just gives that overall sense of calm for them. Or try listening walks. This is a really good one for like that structured listening. So go outside. Hey, Did you hear that bird? Oh, I heard the bus. Did you hear the bus? So again, it's helping them practice what's appropriate, what are the sounds that we should be listening for in the environment. Create controlled sound opportunities, so offer a music zone. So, okay, over here, you can go and play the piano, you know, the drums in the basement thing, kind of thing. So in the house, this is where you can play the pots and pans. This is where you can do the rice shakers, things like that. Using Bluetooth microphones or the Echo microphones, like, I always want to say, like, I am your father kind of microphone at the Dollar Tree, those types of things where they get that extra feedback back. And allow them that noisy time, allow them to explore, but then follow it with the quiet time, because that's what's really going to help that self-regulation piece. Yes, I'm glad you're exploring this, I'm glad you're doing it, but there are times we need to be quiet. So again, there's that teaching component of, I love when you do this, but at the same time, sometimes we need to be quiet. So, because that plays into safety and stuff as they get older. Provide background noise and calming soundscapes during downtime. So just, again, helping set that like overall calm tone to allow them to regulate.
Okay, and then your auditory avoiders. These are your kids that want it quiet in your house all the time. They get freaked out when the fire drill goes off at school, when the washing machine or the vacuum is going off. So prepare their sensory system, their nervous system with some heavy work first. Like we said, that heavy work, that deep pressure is always going to be a good way to calm their sensory system and get them ready for something that they might find a little anxious. Giving them some deep pressure hugs. You can put a weighted lap pad on them. Use some movement input like the rocking or jumping to organize the body before you do any of these things that you know are going to overwhelm their system. And then start with controlled sound play. So give them control of the volume, let them gradually increase it as they are ready for that. And then for your kiddos that don't like the vacuum cleaner or the washing machine, record that and give them the control to turn it up as they're ready for it and start it and stop it and kind of play with that, because then that's giving them the control and getting them used to that on their terms. Tools and supports in a noisy environment. The headphones, I know that everybody is using headphones now. Those are a great way. They also have the soft earplugs. Some of the older kids like those earplugs, but those headphones are great in those noisy environments. The one thing I just want to caution you about is a lot of times, especially kids with autism, they get used to a specific thing and it's very hard to get out of that routine. So you want to make sure that they use those headphones when it's going to be noisy, but when it's not noisy, they take them off. You don't want them coming to school and thinking they need those headphones on all the time, because it might get noisy, because then that's impacting their learning at school. So headphones are great. Just make sure that you're coming with rules and expectations of when they're appropriate to use. Also giving them a comfort item or a fidget for regulation. When you know that there's going to be something loud, give them something that helps comfort them. If you're going into a loud environment, maybe you're gonna go to the park and it's gonna be overstimulating, let them stand at the outside of the park and just listen and explore it without having to be in the middle of it. Get them used to it, and again, give them that control. And then offer predictability. So visuals are great for that too, but if you know that you're going into something that's going to be loud, if you know there's going to be a fire drill at school the next day, tell them about that. Give them a visual. We're going to go to the store and it's going to be loud. You can have your headphones or you can plug your ears, but let them know that so that they can prepare themselves for that. It's predictable.
The last area that we're going to address specifically is our movement seekers and movement avoiders. So the movement seekers these are the kids that do not want to sit down. They are always on the go. So the best ways to, like we said before, kind of fill up their cup. Give them structured, heavy work activities throughout their day to help them seek to fill up that need. So carry laundry baskets, help with the groceries, push or pull the vacuum or the mop, animal walks to get their clothes, make it fun. Help them with their cooking, let them do the hard work, stir the batter, knead the dough. Let's do some of that just to help give that built-in movement. Play and recreation, allow them the time to move, let them jump, let them crawl, make forts, tunnels, structured movement with obstacle courses, allowing that so you're filling up their cup. So when it comes time to a seated activity, okay, we gotta sit down and do your homework now. They have met some of that need so they can focus and attend a little bit better. And then the big thing too, like after you do some of these really arousing things like jumping or things like that, use the calming after movement. So the deep pressure, the rocking, breathing, yoga is really good, or the metronome, just to kind of help bring that back down. Because that's a key component of self-regulation, being able to regulate from coming up here to coming back down. So I just got to, like, if you think about it, like when we go and do a workout, we're running, we're jumping, we're doing weights, all of that. But at the end, it's stretching, it's calming down, it's deep breathing, things like that. So we want to help our kids have those same self-regulation capabilities.
And then we have your movement avoiders. So these are your kiddos that are terrified to come down the stairs, or they don't want to go to the park because they don't want to go on the slide or get on the swing. They're just terrified of that movement. So some of the things that you can do to help them is to start with predictable and gentle movements. So rocking in a rocking chair or on a therapy ball, holding on to them. You can even put them in your lap and start that way. So they're in your lap and you're doing the movement, but you're providing that deep pressure, because again, we know that that deep pressure is calming. And then providing that movement slowly, again, giving them that control. So if they want to stop, then you stop. Short linear swinging back and forth, slowly putting them on a swing, holding on to them, swinging them slowly back and forth. Make sure you don't do any kind of spinning. Spinning is just overwhelming, and it's a much scarier movement than that linear swinging. If they're at the slide, do slow sliding. Put them on the slide, don't let go of them. Bring them down the slide slowly so that they get used to that movement, and then you can kind of fade away your support. Gentle bouncing on a large ball with their feet on the floor. So moving with your feet on the floor is much easier than moving with your feet off the floor. Again, give the control and choice to the child. Let them decide when to start, when to stop, how fast do you want to go. When they say all done, we are all done. Use hands-on activities first. Like I said, put them in your lap, and then put them on a swing and hold on to them. And then you can let go of them and you can push them without your hands on them. And then gradually increase the duration or the intensity as they're ready. Pair movement with comfort, again, giving that deep pressure, which I talked about, combining movement with calm input such as music, just singing to them. When you're putting them on a swing, you can sing to them. That's calming for them. And always follow with grounding activities such as heavy work or tactile play.
The next one we're going to talk about too is, we know change is hard. Change is really hard for kids with sensory processing, because it's that what's coming, what's going to happen next. So it is difficult because it's change in new situations. They have that anxiety. It enacts our fight or flight response, and we need to know how to regulate to come back from that. And they might just have difficulty. They really like doing puzzles, but we really need to transition to the bus. So we need to disengage in that preferred activity because the schedule is saying we have to do this. New environments too are very overwhelming, like we've talked throughout this thing. So giving them some predictability is really important in that. And the best way, as we have been talking about, visuals are great. Picture cards, timers, using that first. Then giving transitional routines, but more like predictable routines, so that they know what's coming. But in school, I know sometimes on our visual schedule, if we have like everything's going to be the same, but something's different, we have a surprise. We have to get them used to that surprise element. Like something's going to be different and it's going to be a surprise, and we got to know how to work through it. Giving that sensory deep pressure, calm movement, and all of those strategies to help when we know change is coming. Offer the choices so they feel control, and just practice with your kid. Practice these changes. The more they have an opportunity to practice it, the better they're going to be at it.
Yeah, so another thing I wanted to mention too is some great extracurricular activities that can help your child that might struggle with some of these sensory pieces. Swimming is a great activity. Swimming is So much proprioception, just being in the water. You'll find a lot of these kiddos that struggle love to be in the bathtub. That water provides that deep pressure all the time. And if you can get them into swimming and actually stroke swimming, that repetitiveness of swimming can be very calming and organizing. So that's a great extracurricular activity that you can get your student in that would be fabulous for them. Karate, Taekwondo, any of those where they're doing some controlled movements. It's also going to really help them with their body awareness, where their body is in space. So those kinds of things are great extracurriculars that you can get your kid into after school to work on some of these sensory pieces. And then the last thing that we just wanted to say is that we really encourage everybody to consider the amount of screen time in your daily routine. Research shows that reduced screen time can enhance opportunities for functional play and active engagement and learning. Really work with your kid and teach them how to play. Kids aren't born knowing how to play with toys, so instead of turning on the screen, sit down and play with them. Teach them how to build with those blocks. Teach them how to use those Legos. By fostering a variety of play experiences and face-to-face interactions, we can further promote essential skills needed for our children, teaching those communication skills that are so important when they come to school. So supporting their and creating a positive and enriching environment for our kids. And we really want you to help us do that for your children.
So just to finish off, like, we are all a team. You guys are in the front lines. You're the parents. You have your kids all the time. So we just encourage you, as your kid is in school or getting ready to school, have that open line of communication. Communicate with your teachers, your staff. If you're noticing things at home, they all play a part in what we're doing at school too. And that should go both ways. So if we're doing a strategy, we know it works at school, we're going to communicate that back to you. So we want to make sure that communication is key when it comes to meeting the needs of your kids, your sensory needs of your kids. So please keep that communication open. You're the most important member of that team besides your student. You're their advocate. You're the one that's going to be kind of helping us know what triggers your kids. So let us know what those are. Let your teachers know, everybody, and we can create a beautiful plan to help them succeed.
Okay, and then we just have some resources for you up here you can take a look at. Like I said, there is the little scanner code on the papers for lots of different handouts that go over a lot of the information that we shared tonight. We have shared so much information. I think the big takeaway is, besides communicating, and you know your child the best, really communicate with your teachers and your families what they need. But that deep pressure, that slow rhythmic rocking, that sucking on a pacifier, those are all going to calm. So if your kid's struggling with some of that overstimulation, no matter for what reason, and you may not even know what reason, resort back to those things you know when you brought those babies home, what you did to calm them. Okay? Does anybody have questions? Sure. Bashi martial arts. You're good. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Just so everyone can hear everyone's question, can you guys repeat it back so everyone
yes.
knows what your answer
Perfect.
is?
Yep.
Thank you so much. No, thank you.
So yeah, martial arts, karate, where can we go if our child has autism? So Bashi martial arts. Yes. Yes.
The online chat asks if teachers are receiving the same training.
Are teachers receiving the same training? Teachers, we started with our special ed department and they received training 2 weeks ago on this information, and it's getting out to everybody in the district. The video is also going out to everybody in the district, and the handouts. Yes.
Will you be open or have a way to send this training to their providers?
We will have a link on YouTube because it's videotaped, so there will be a link that,
Or do you guys send that out? Like, how do you guys?
how should they get that link?
How do you guys send out?
I'm a daycare provider, but I have kids in the school system, so that's how I go about it, but I'm just asking for.
Yeah, I don't know how it's all rolled out, actually.
So if you registered, I'll have Danita Washington send you the link, because most of you emailed a reservation for tonight, so I'll make sure that we get the link to her and she can email it directly to you.
Okay.
And then Fort Wayne Community Schools does have a YouTube channel that this will be put on, so I'm sure that you could probably go to that in the next couple of days and find that on there. Anybody else? All right.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time today.
Yes,
We
thank
really
you.
appreciate you all taking time to come and see our talk.